Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much. Listening to John Key's speech, all I could think of was if that's the best the national government can do, bring on the next election. Because New Zealanders have been waiting. They've been waiting for over 4 years, heading on towards 5 years now. We're in the sixth calendar year of this national government, and still New Zealanders are waiting for that brighter future that John Key promised them. Remember that? He was ambitious for New Zealand. He was going to deliver us a brighter future. He was going to stem the exodus to Australia. How has he gone on those? Everything was going to get better under John Key, yet we're going to turbocharge the economy. And yet every major indicator of government performance under this national government has gotten worse. And what do we get from National now? Oh, that's all someone else's fault. They've got an excuse for everything and a solution for nothing. They have no new ideas about how to address the major problems that New Zealand's facing, but they've got an excuse. Everywhere we turn, they've got an excuse. So they put Stephen Joyce in charge of NovaPay. He quickly went from the Mr. Fix-It to the Mr. Excuses. It took him a week to stop claiming he was going to fix NovaPay to blaming everybody else for it and telling teachers, actually, I'm not here to fix it. The bad news is it's all going to get worse. It only took him a week to get to that point. So listening to the very introduction of John Key's remarks, what are the big ideas? Well, the big things that he could point to were a cabinet reshuffle, where the bright hope of the future is Nick Smith, and warrant of fitness changes. That's going to turbocharge the economy, because of course deregulation works so well in the building industry. And that's what they want to do now for the automotive industry. That's their big idea. The one thing John Key didn't say, which he could have said, was that they're going to make a list of all of their lists. Because every time John Key delivers another speech in Parliament, we get another list, another set of priorities, another group, another set of themes. When are they actually going to start delivering on all of these goals and targets they set? We haven't seen any evidence of any progress so far to date on any of that. John Key alluded to the Talking Heads song Burning Down the House. I'm interested to note that comes from the album called Stop Making Sense. Well, John Key didn't need to be told that. He was already well and truly there. But I've got another Talking Heads song for John Key that's actually far more appropriate. It's called The Road to Nowhere. Because that's exactly where we're going under this national government. We are on the road to nowhere under the National Party. John Key gave exactly the same speech last year, exactly the same speech the year before, and exactly the same speech the year before that. And what have they delivered? Nothing. All the priorities have been the same. 5 times now we've had to listen to John Key talk about them, and 5 times he's failed to actually be able to point to a single result. For 5 years we've been listening to this, and yet no results. New Zealanders are getting sick and tired of waiting. And at the next election, they are going to deliver their verdict on this national government. John Key told the country that he's asked his ministers to lift their game. Well, what's he been doing for the last 4.5 years? Clearly he didn't seem to mind that they were underperforming. Then, of course, at the next election, New Zealanders are going to look at John Key and they're going to see, well, what would another term of national look like? As well as the complete absence of any ideas, who would John Key be relying on to prop him up? Well, we've got John Banks, the man who had the audacity to come to the House this afternoon and talk about handouts. John Banks talking about handouts. Peter Dunn, the man who was single-handedly responsible for ending the planking craze. And then Colin Craig, whose highest priority appears to be to maintain gender-segregated toilets. That's what John Key's future government is going to look like. Then we turn to education, and of course we on the opposition benches are so relieved that John Key has left that great communicator, Hikia Parata, in place as the Minister of Education. We are very, very pleased that Hikia Parata will be continuing as Minister of Education. Let's go back over a few of her greatest hits. She made her grand splash as Minister of Education by telling parents that she could improve the quality of their kids' education by putting more of them in every class. That was Hikia Parata's great solution. That was a policy that even Anne Tolley had the sense to know that it wasn't going to work and it wasn't going to be a good idea. Hikia Parata told us at the time that improving the quality of teachers was important, and even mooted the idea that teaching should be a postgraduate profession. So one should have to have a postgraduate qualification before entering the classroom, and then promptly within the next very short period of time introduce these very shortened teaching qualifications that are actually a lot less than an undergraduate degree for someone to move into teaching. And then, of course, introduce the idea of charter schools, something National were working on before the last election, but didn't put in their manifesto. Introduce the idea of charter schools where teachers wouldn't have to be registered or qualified at all. What was Anne Tolley's next great triumph? Well, it's difficult. At this point, the list starts to become quite extensive, but let's start with Christchurch schooling. Having started what was quite a good process, and I'll give her credit for this, started quite a good process, engaging the community and getting buy-in to the idea that change was required. The government did quite a good job of that first part of the process, and I'll give them credit for that. And then they completely pulled the rug out from under it by putting up a whole series of very concrete proposals that then became just ideas, and then they were concrete proposals again, and completely destroying all of the goodwill towards change that had been built up in Christchurch. Then we had the Nova Pay debacle. Now, this is not all Hikia Parata's fault. Of course, Craig Foss shares some responsibility, as does Bill English. It was the three of them. It was the three of them that signed off on the implementation. Oh, now Amy Adams thinks it was the Labour Party's fault, because after 5 years, the best they can do is blame the previous Labour government for something that they have done, that they put in place. The process of selecting a new payroll system, yes, that started under the Labour Party, under the last Labour government, but after 5 years, clearly the government did nothing. Clearly this government did absolutely nothing in that area, despite the fact that it's their signatures that will be found on the pieces of paper hitting the go live for Nova Pay, and still all they can come up with is excuses and not one solution. Up and down the country, thousands of people are still waiting to be paid, and all they are interested in doing is pointing the finger and saying, it's not our fault, it's going to get worse, there's nothing we can do. That's all that all those thousands of people are getting from this national government is excuses. It's not good enough. They want solutions. And if all the National Party can do is come up with excuses, hand back the salaries, we'll happily take over and we'll fix the problem. Any day they want, we'll happily fix that problem. And then, of course, we've got what else happened in education? Well, they decided that, oh gosh, things are getting a bit difficult, we need a scapegoat. Blame the officials. Sack the Secretary for Education, the one who they handpicked to implement the agenda that they selected. And all of the things that they pointed out that had gone wrong under the current Secretary of Education all stemmed back to policies that ministers had put in place. Now, what happened to the idea that ministers are the ones who are accountable? They're the ones who put their names on the ballot paper, ultimately are the ones who have the responsibility and the accountability. That doesn't exist under this national government anymore, because they've still got John Banks down there, no responsibility there. They've got Hikia Parata sitting over there, no responsibility being accepted over there. And Nick Smith, the guy who had to resign from Cabinet because he abused his position to get preferential treatment for one of his mates, got restored to Cabinet in this latest reshuffle. There is no ideas or notions of responsibility and accountability in this government. Oh no, none at all. The best that they can do, that they can come up with, is bringing out a few retreads. New Zealanders know that on all of the fundamental measures, this government is failing. With unemployment, with unemployment at 7.3%. Clearly, the Minister of Employment's got a bit of time on his hands to dabble in other people's portfolio areas. With deficits being run up every year, this government seems to think that they can take the focus off that. With the exodus of Australia continually increasing, suddenly they're not talking about that anymore. It's a government with no ideas. It has run out of energy after only 4.5 years, and at the next election they will be replaced.
Honourable Amy Adams.